Let's do this.
The way you glared at me when I said, "Is it like a lion's roar?" Oh, God. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club. I believe this is episode 43. And I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And our trusty producer,
Riley Bray. And I think it's actually episode 53.
No, it's not, sir. We have
Are
not
you
been
sure about
doing
that?
this for a year.
Yeah, but we've doubled down episodes.
Well, yes, but it's episode 43 because we count some of the other episodes, like our listener files, aren't numbered as they're numbered as L files.
Oh, okay.
So you're both
All
right.
So we're both right.
All
Probably
right.
there are around 53 episodes,
I think
but
there's like 220.
I think there's like 760.
We're Bigfoot Collectors Club from the future.
Yeah.
Time
you know
traveling
what?
back.
You do get an appreciation for those people who have like 400 episodes of their podcast.
Oh,
You're like,
man.
my God.
Yeah.
I know. I was thinking about that the other day. I actually had the thought the other day. I was like, what have we done? My God, what have we done? Like, we've started something that we will never end. I was like,
Can't
week
stop now.
after week after week.
My wife might have a say about that.
No, she has no say. We've been possessed by the BCC
Oh, my
podcast
God.
monster. Wow, so we have an amazing guest who this week who's not in studio, but we just had a really great conversation with her. Author Linda S. Godfrey is on the show today. And
Yes.
oh boy, you know, if you've been listening to the show, you've been hearing me raving about her work before. She wrote the book Monsters Among Us and American Monsters. She's the reporter who broke the story on the Beast of Bray Road. If you haven't listened to that episode, go check that out. That was from I think last February or March with Kristen Bauer was in that episode.
Our first official cryptid investigator.
Dude, we're now a real
Legit.
paranormal podcast.
Yeah.
We're official. We've got a real expert on the show today.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And also our first remote interview, which was
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
exciting.
We're growing.
yeah, we're
you
growing, guys. We're becoming. We still don't have T-shirts, but we will.
We will.
Very soon.
They're coming.
Very,
They're
very
coming.
soon.
They're
We're working
coming.
on it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how fun was that? I mean,
That was
we'll
awesome.
we'll obviously cut to the interview in just a moment, but
And it was our first Skype interview, so there was a few little scratches and screeches,
Beep,
but
boop,
don't
boop, boop.
mind those.
We
plow right through them.
Chewbacca ironed them out pretty quickly here, so don't worry about that. And it really,
buffering.
it was a great conversation just to be able to sit down. It's always great to be able to sit down. Not that we don't love our actors and celebrities and musicians and writers who have great personal paranormal histories of their own, but to be able to sit down and talk to an expert and really be able to like speak the the lingo.
Talk Dogman Shop.
Yeah, is so delicious.
It is.
I mean, I had a million questions going through my head. I want to be like, oh, I want to circle around back to that. Oh, I can't. Of course, we couldn't get to everything, but we have a good chunky interview with Linda S. Godfrey. So why don't we play that for you now, and then we'll come back, and guess what? We still have some high strangeness for you this week that Bryce has brought in. So
Can't wait.
enjoy our talk with Linda S. Godfrey, and we'll meet you back here after the break.
Booyah.
All right, so our guest today is Linda S. Godfrey. She's an author, journalist, cartoonist, and one of the leading cryptid investigators working in the field today. Her books include The Beast of Bray Road, Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America, American Monsters, and Monsters Among Us, as well as a fantasy novel called God Johnson, The Unforgiven Diary. Linda, it is such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
So before we started rolling, we were talking about the weather changing here in Los Angeles as it's now October, that spooky month that we all love, and the dangers of falling palm trees or palm leaves. And you were talking to us just off the cuff about a Sasquatch ripping a branch off a giant oak tree. Is that true?
It is. It is. It was a crazy time. It was in August 2012. I really had not been having much luck over the past, before that, 20-some years, since that's how long I've been at this. and had really not seen much at all in the field other than footprints and that sort of thing. And I was just out for a walk. I lived at the time on the edge of a forest, a state forest called the Kettle Moraine, which has deep gorges and high ridges in between, and people don't go in it much. But I was walking along a trail just on a whim, Sunday afternoon. Nobody was around. It was completely quiet. And I just took it into my head to try. I had never tried this before, and I was all alone. I thought, what the heck? I picked up a branch and I tried hitting a tree with it, like the Bigfoot hunters do.
Right.
And I tried it a couple of times, and lo and behold, I got a knock back. And the knock was from very, very close to me. And it was in an oak tree, a big old oak tree that was growing up out of one of these kettles or little gorges, so that it was partly down in there and partly up over it. And I was almost at eye level because it was growing from down below.
Right.
With what I could see the leaves shaking. And I thought, well, that can't have just happened, So I tried it again, and I got another knockback. And I mean, it was so close that if it had been a human, and there weren't any people around at all, and people don't go down into those kettles normally because they're full of brush and tangles and ticks, and that kind of thing. So I was starting to get a glimmer of what this might be that was doing it, but I couldn't believe it. I was just standing there in shock and disbelief. Plus, I was all by myself.
Right.
I didn't
that was my next thought.
Just you and your 357 Magnum.
Yeah, I left it home that day. But I had to know, because there were only two things that could grasp a branch. You had to have an opposable thumb to hold an 8 foot, or excuse me, it was 8 inches thick and 35 feet long, this branch. I measured it later. But it was huge. And the tree was so full of foliage. It was completely green. There were no dead leaves on it. I knew it was living, whatever it was, or whatever was doing this. And I hit it again, and this time, instead of hitting the tree again, there was this huge crack sound, like when you hear, well, maybe you don't hear this in LA very much, but when we have an ice storm and the branches get too heavy, they crack and fall.
I grew up in Kansas, so I know that sound.
Yeah, so you know that one. Yeah, so there was this tearing, cracking sound, and again, in total disbelief. It was so surreal. It's hard to describe. It's like you think you're in a dream, but you're not, or you're hoping you're in a dream. So I did it one more time, and that time the answer was to rip the rest of the branch completely from the tree, and whatever was doing it was hidden behind the leaves that there were so many of on that tree, and it threw it like 40 feet down to the bottom of that kettle.
Whoa. Wow.
And at that point, I knew what it was. There was absolutely nothing else, although I had a few questions in my mind as I'm running home as fast as I can.
Yeah, so you didn't hesitate. You just ran as soon as that tree branch flew? I mean, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I did, because I know, I just knew in my mind that it couldn't have been a human. It was just too big and too heavy. And then I thought, well, what if woodpeckers had gotten at it? Although
Right.
woodpeckers usually go after dead trees. And this one, I could see the white, nice wood where it was splitting away from the tree trunk, So I knew that it was not a rotten old tree. But I thought, well, maybe, what if some deranged human had slogged through that little crevasse to get up in that tree and saw off part of the branch, and then...
But why? Why would anyone do that?
That doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your mind is just stretching for anything other than what I knew it to be.
I guess you could have a neighbor. You could have had a neighbor that knew you were a cryptid investigator and wanted to torment you. But why would anyone do this?
What an elaborate hoax! And how would they have known when I was going to go for that walk?
Exactly.
Like I said, it was just spur of the moment. My family had gone somewhere, and I was just wanting to get a little exercise. But again, just ran out the door. I thought I'll do maybe a mile and come back. So I had a friend who's a trained field investigator too, who lived about 5 minutes away from me. I called her. She and her 20-year-old daughter were right over, and I can't believe we did this, but we went down into that kettle because I just had to see it. There were no woodpecker marks, no saw marks, nothing like that. We did find where something on the branch in two places had rubbed away these mitten-like shapes, but they were like twice the size of a human hand. I still have, and then I found the bark. Something had crushed the tree and the bark so hard that this shape of the bark just fell right off of the tree, and I still have that. And it stunk like sweetgrass and skunk, just slightly.
Whoa.
Looks
Yeah,
like something wanted to make your books.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, it got worse. I mean, it got more than that. Her daughter was just kind of wandering around aimlessly on the ridge, sort of bored. And all of a sudden we heard her scream. And by the time we got up there and looked, she had seen it. She had seen a Bigfoot. And it was an unusual color. Most people don't know that they can be this color. They're called blonde Bigfoots, but they're...
we get them out here in California.
Yeah,
Yucca
like
Man is a blonde out in the Mojave.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a beige and gray mix, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't know that they could be that. And she saw it running behind a big bunch of greenery. And she said she was kind of in shock, and described it as being huge and the right size. And she said it was moving fast, but it wasn't exactly walking or running. I'd say it was striding, which is a perfect way to describe how they just sneak from one place to another. And then we were standing there, and it growled at us from behind that green. And it was this deep, just low, huge, noisy growl that you knew whatever was making that had a set of lungs on it.
Right. Oh my gosh. So you're hearing that growl when you say like deep guttural, large lungs. Was it something akin to like a lion, or was it more
like a Bigfoot, Michael?
More like a Bigfoot? No,
it
but
was more like a Bigfoot. Well, lions or great cats have that kind of, it's almost a purring growl.
Right.
When they growl, it's this almost smooth purring sound to it. And, it was closer maybe to like a big dog's growl, but not really. It was still different than that. It's hard. It was just so deep down into the sound spectrum that it was hard to believe, anything could be making that noise. But the hair just literally stood up on the backs of our necks. And I just said, ladies, I think we need to leave now. and we did. Now, if you want to see some photos of this, if you go to lindagodfrey.com, that's my blog, and there's a search box, just type in Bigfoot branch.
Okay.
And there's a picture of that branch and of the mitten-shaped bark that was taken off of it.
We're going to check it out right now.
Yeah, and that was my inaugural experience with really seeing these creatures out there.
I mean, and this wasn't your first time experience with cryptids. You had been writing, years prior to all this.
Well, and I'd been doing field work since the very beginning. One of the first things that happened was this other paper wanted me to take a supermarket chicken and put it out in the ditch at Bray Road, where people had been seeing this upright wolf-like creature.
Oh yeah, I want to get into
wow.
into all that. Real quick before we move on, did you ever experience anything with with that particular Bigfoot again? Any evidence of him in those woods again?
I never saw that blonde one myself. I think it was just passing through or something. And where it had been, that tree.
Oh, I see this. Yeah, we're looking at the photo right now.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Whoa.
It still scares me when I see it. The tree was right on a super well-used deer trail where I'd seen some really large deer. I think maybe it was like a community deer for supper spot or something. But I did see 3 separate viewings in 2014 in different seasons of the year, doing slightly different things, of a smaller black-furred one with a round head. It didn't have the crest,
Oh, really?
But I did see it 3 times in daylight each time, and not all that far away. Not as close as I was to the branch, but really close enough to to tell what it was.
How when you say small, how many feet are we talking? 5, 6 feet?
I would say this one was probably around 6 feet, maybe.
Okay.
It was hard to tell exactly.
And do you think it was a juvenile, or do you think it was just the adult species of that type is not as tall as some of the other crested ones?
I think it could be both, or either. It's hard to say. I did think that it was a juvenile because I had, before that, a couple years previous, found what looked like some juvenile footprints in that vicinity. and they weren't castable because they were on a sloped ground.
Mm.
But there was another one that was taller and probably more like 7-8 feet, and was a dark brown color that had fur that was in the same area. And I should preface all this by saying the southern unit of the Kettle Moraine State Forest has had sightings since the 1960s.
Okay.
And I've documented a lot of them. So it's not like it was me in particular. It's just that I happened to be living right next to a really lively area for Bigfoot. And once I think most people live in those places, and if you're not thinking about them, if you're not tuned in, you would hear something and you would just put it off to another source and not think about it. Or you're not looking to the sides when you're driving. You're just looking like you should be straight ahead of the road.
Right.
Wow. Linda, let me double back on that real quick. You said it
Sure.
wasn't me in particular. Do you ever get the feeling or the sensation that maybe there is something to you as an observer that might have attracted or this type of sighting or anything like that? Do you ever feel like that that we can play a part into that, or was this just sort of a random happenstance? You just had to be at the right place at the right time.
I think it might have been a little bit of both, although what I think is that they're very tuned in to humans who are in whatever vicinity they're in, because that's, their lives sort of depend upon that. And there was a real interesting study a few years ago with crows, which are extremely intelligent birds, and it was proven that crows could follow certain humans and identify them when they came outside, especially if a human had had some, treat or bread or something and put it down.
Yeah, they remember faces.
Exactly. They would know who those humans were. Well, if a crow can do that, certainly a giant humanoid could do it. And I think what they would do would be to watch any humans that are in that vicinity. And then most of the time, like I kind of said earlier, humans are just, let me get where I'm going. I'm thinking about, what I'm doing next. I'm going to the office. And they're not looking around or watching what's next to them. And when they see somebody who's walking, looking carefully, stopping at one of their footprints, looking around, looking up in the trees, they go, uh-oh, yeah, we got a live one here.
Wow.
And from then on, they might be more aware of you when you're there, and perhaps they've gotten to that point.
I wish you could see the smile on Bryce's face right now, Linda. This is like his dream come true hearing this story.
I'm very curious about your friend's 20-year-old daughter. Like, was she
Where are you going with this,
Oh, just
Bryce?
give me a minute here. Is she into this type of stuff, or was she a skeptic, or was she just there to help her mom out, or how did that change or affect what she saw and what she believed?
Well, she was totally neutral. I mean, she really didn't know much about it, hadn't thought about it. And like you said, she was mostly there to help her mom out,
Wow.
just, Sandra said, Sandra Schwab is her name. And she said, well, Natalie, there's something there. And why don't you come along? I think Sandra was a little nervous too, because she could tell from my voice. And it's always a good idea to have 3 rather than 2 in my book when you're doing something like that. So at least one of them could run for help.
Linda, do you think that one of these creatures would attack a human, would have hurt you guys?
I think if we had persisted and gotten aggressive acting, or had seemed like we were going to threaten it in some way, there's always that potentiality, and I tell people, because people say, well, what do I do if I see one? Should I run up to it, shake its hand? Should I run the other way? And I said, well, what I think is that since they appear to be some sort of animal, well, in the case of Bigfoot, I really think they're a type of human.
That was my next question.
Yeah, but the thing is, since we don't know for sure, because nobody to anyone's satisfaction has been able to hold one up and examine it and take its blood test and all that kind of thing. We don't know. So what I recommend is treating them with the same respect you would show to any sort of predator that's big enough to eat you.
Yeah. I always felt like, within the Bigfoot social order, there might have been some rules passed down from the Bigfoot elders. Like, now you can throw rocks at them. You can, you can respond to their tree knocking, but, and you can even kidnap the occasional one or two. But
throw one in their sleeping bag.
Throw it in your sleeping bag, but we're not allowed to hurt them or bite them or.
Bryce likes to prescribe to the gentle giant aspect of Bigfoot. I think they could probably get pretty nasty if they want to.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, I do too. It's the same with the Dogman type of thing. It's just that there may have been fatal accidents and people never lived to tell the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, they both really otherwise seem mostly territorial, like they're just trying to get you the heck out of their feeding grounds or their birthing places or whatever else they have to shield from the nosy humans.
Well, if you believe Teddy Roosevelt's story about his friend, the explorer
Yeah, the Bauman.
Bauman, and his encounter with some type of entity in the woods, that, according to him, one of these creatures killed his prospecting partner in that
Mhm.
story. So, and I mean, he was like crushed to death.
Now,
It
this was
sounds
before
super
the
scary.
term Bigfoot was coined. He referred to him as a hairy boogeyman
Yeah, a
of sorts.
goblin.
But a goblin, right, that walked on two legs. But nonetheless, he tore his friend apart.
So creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well-
dogs don't hesitate for dogs or anything that really is threatening to them. I mean, they're not different than us. They're not going to lie down and be shot or killed or whatever we want to do to them just so we can examine their bodies.
Right, right. So listen, we can't talk to you without talking about dogmen. You already brought them up, and I don't even know where to begin because I love dogs, but I thought that this phenomenon was honestly, I thought it was a joke until I read your book, Monsters Among Us, and I read your research on the Beast of Bray Road, and now dogmen for me have jumped to the top of my favorite cryptid.
Your cryptid
Yeah.
food chain.
Like, I love these stories. They are so compelling. They are so fascinating. Can you talk a little bit about what drew you into the Beast of Bray Road story to begin with? We have a question that we like to ask our guests, which we've already gotten into, which is, what is your personal paranormal history? And you could probably speak for days I mean, about that. But can you take us back a little bit to the beginning of where you were when the Beast of Bray Road happened and how you started researching this phenomenon?
Well, it was never my intention at all. I mean,
Yeah. I don't think
just-
most people wake up, except for us now that we're doing a podcast. I think most people don't wake up and go, Dogmen, let's go for that.
No, but even you and I were propelled into this sort of
true.
these sort of things, you know.
It's true. So, Linda, go on, please.
Well, I actually was trying to be a nationally syndicated cartoonist.
By the way, I really enjoy your artwork.
you.
Everyone should go to Linda's website and check out her stuff, and her illustrations are in her books as well.
Thank you. And that's lindagodfrey.com with no W's, by
There
the
you
way.
go.
Yep. But anyway, this was back in the late early 1990s, like 1989, 1991. And I had been working to do either a nationally syndicated comic strip, which is really hard to do. And I had gotten so close and then had a big disappointment. And I was also doing editorial cartoons back in the day when I was still able to be opinionated in one direction or the other.
Right.
Today, I'm too able to see both sides of something. It makes it really hard to be an editorial cartoonist.
That's a good thing.
But back then, I think it is. It's easier to live that way. But and I did have I was able to join the National Cartoonist Society, and I had cartoons in the 1991, 92, and 93 best editorial cartoons
Oh, that's
books.
so cool.
Pelican Press, yeah. So, I mean, it's not like I was totally dreaming about it, but it was very hard if you didn't live in a big city to get any kind of a job doing that, and harder if you were a woman. I think there were 2 other women in that cartoonist society,
Oh, yeah.
and I was a member. So anyway, I had gone and just volunteered my services for free to our county newspaper, and they literally started paying me $8 a cartoon. It was not the Depression era. It was
Time to quit the job.
Oh, man.
exactly. But I did it just to get some things printed, and have something to show. And one
You're
day-
talking to working actors in Los Angeles. We know the feeling.
We know all about $8.
Yeah, and a
And a
musician.
musician.
Yeah, and a musician to
There
boot.
you go. Yeah, about the same level. Musicians, artists, and journalists all
Yeah.
paid about the same. But anyway, I was talking to the editor, and it just so happened that their main reporter had quit. And I think he sort of jokingly said, "Oh, so you want to be a reporter?" And I thought, well, this is an opportunity. How hard could that be? maybe if I were around there more, I'd get to do more artwork and cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And so I accepted, and the first thing that came up was people around my hometown of Elkhorn were saying something that looked like a werewolf was showing up on this country road outside of Elkhorn, and several people had seen it. And when I looked into it, I found other people. They seemed very, just like normal, regular people. They didn't seem like they were lying or trying to make a hoax. And we ran the story, and it went national without the internet, I might add.
Right.
Within a couple of weeks, we had the new Sci-Fi's New In Search Of came out at the time.
Oh, wow.
And
had you given any thought previously to things of this nature?
Well, not of things that looked like werewolves, because I just figured they were sort of some unknown some unknown thing from long ago, if they ever existed at all. I didn't believe in the Hollywood ones. I really was interested in Bigfoot. I'd been keeping up with those books and other things in the paranormal, just as part of my religious studies, I considered them.
Mm-hmm.
So I had kind of a mind toward that way, but I did not think, and I still don't think, that these upright canines with wolf-like features were werewolves. That humans turning into wolves,
Right.
and the full moon and all that. That's mostly
that's what I think of when I think of a werewolf. Is it's somebody?
Yeah.
It's a human that transforms
Full
into
moon, silver bullet.
Yeah. So
Right.
how do you categorize you call them upright canines, dogmen? How do you categorize them, and what is their relationship to something like Bigfoot?
Good question.
Yeah, well, it's hard. It's really hard to categorize them because, again, we don't know exactly what they are, and most of the sightings are just, it runs along the road. It might bump up against your car. It might just run in front of the car. It might be eating something, but it's not doing anything magical because just being a biped, walking on your hind legs, is not a supernatural act. Almost
Right.
any animal can do it. It's just that four-legged quadrupeds are not meant to bear all their weight on their hind legs, and it's uncomfortable. They don't normally do it unless they're hurt or have a disease or something. So it's unusual for us to see them doing this in the wild. And so I was really leaning more toward the idea for a long time that it was probably some kind of natural wolf, or maybe a large coy dog or coy wolf, some kind of hybrid that had been injured or something and was walking upright because it gave it some sort of advantage, like it could see over the top of the corn or, what it was. But then over time, it's been now like 26 years since that happened, going on 27. And I realized that we had gone long past the lifespan of any normal wolf. I think a normal wolf's lifespan in the wild is something like 8-9 years, and that's a pretty good one. And that also, back when this was first published in the newspaper and it went national, everybody from around the world who had seen one started writing me about it, and I had realized it was not just this one little road and this one little creature. There were creatures that looked and sounded exactly like this one all over North and South America, Europe, other places. And it was a worldwide phenomenon that was just not recognized as being as universal as it is.
It only takes one person to really start to come out and talk about this stuff, right? I mean, sometimes I feel like these witnesses are just waiting for another person to sound a little bit crazier than them. You know what I mean? To feel comfortable talking about it.
Sure.
That's true. And people are still, I still to this day will get messages from people saying, I saw this thing 20 years ago. I never knew what it was. I thought I was crazy. Then I saw you on TV. So I'm writing to you and hoping you can tell me what it is. Well, I still don't claim to be able to do that, but there just are so many associations, and there are other things that look like upright canines that seem to have more of a paranormal cast to them, or you get into like the Native American skinwalker things, or others that may have to do with certain rights or psychological abilities, that kind of thing.
One of the things I found remarkable when reading, I believe it was in Monsters Among Us, and you were talking about, or maybe it was when I was reading your work on research on the Beast of Bray Road. one of the things that jumped out at me was how many eyewitnesses described these creatures as having shoulders that are more like a human's than a dog's. Is that correct? Like it has more of a human-shaped torso than something that would be like a wolf walking around on its hind legs. You know, a dog has very different shaped arms and shoulders than we do.
Right. Yeah. They basically don't have shoulders.
Right.
Which is why when somebody does describe that, at first it really surprised me. But when I started thinking about it, you can rationalize it as that many people, when they see these things running around, they'll be carrying like a quarter of a deer, or they've got something over a dead dog over their shoulder, or something like that. And if you think about it, those forelimbs are being used for activities that the creature normally wouldn't use them for. Normally, they're just being used to run on. But now they're being asked to, hold these things and do all sorts of other stuff. So naturally, they would get more muscle in areas where they normally wouldn't have that amount of muscle built up.
Now you said carrying a quarter of a deer, and then you said or a dead dog. Is there?
And then you kind of laughed, Linda.
Is there?
I got a little nervous.
Is there a lot of? Are there witness accounts of dogmen sort of hunting or preying upon other canines or domesticated dogs?
Yeah, I've gotten reports, and the only reason I kind of chuckled is because I'm aware of how crazy it sounds.
No, of course, yeah, we tease.
I'm always aware of what it sounds like, but this is just what I just report on what people see. And I had one fellow who had seen his dog run barking into the woods, and by the time he found him, the dog was pretty much in shreds.
Oh, bummer.
He had seen like a dogman, and it's kind of like they and the Bigfoot don't like to have dogs up close to them in most cases if the dogs are yapping and giving away their position in the woods, or who knows, going after their young ones.
Yeah.
And cats also seem to be on the menu as well.
Keep your cats inside, everybody.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like those same rules that seem to apply to humans don't apply to animals like cattle and dogs and cats and stuff like that. You see a lot more cases of these type of animal mutilations, absolutely, and they're out there for everybody to see, as opposed to just some missing person gone with no trace or no evidence,
Right.
Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, in one of the original eyewitness accounts of the Beast of Bray Road, didn't one of the drivers who saw the beast on the side of the road in a ditch, wasn't he carrying like some fish in his hands or some type of food, some type of animal?
I'm not recalling one with fish necessarily.
Maybe it was mistaking that part of it, but
there have been people who have seen a couple of times, and people have seen them sort of kneeling in a way that canines wouldn't normally kneel, and holding like a piece of dead roadkill or something in their upturned palms.
Right, that's what I'm thinking of.
Or kneeling and drinking at a river, and cupping their paws together and bringing the water up to their jaws, rather than putting their head down in and lapping like you would expect a canine to do.
Right, that is such a spooky image. Just
It
a dog man drinking out of his own palms. I don't know why that's so scary to me, but
because it's a very human gesture.
Yeah.
Maybe a primate, maybe gorillas do that. I don't know, or chimps, but what else would?
If I were to come home and find my two dogs, I have a terrier and an English bulldog, walking around on their hind legs, that would be the scariest thing I think I've ever seen in my life. So what is the what's the Michigan Dogman? What's kind of the one-liner on that? Because I was trying to do some research on it, and I came across some stuff that said that it was actually the Michigan Dogman was something that a radio host wrote a kind of a gag song about, but since then, or even before then, people were actually seeing an upright canine in Michigan.
Yeah, that's pretty close to it, actually. The thing that was in Michigan, though, sounds pretty much exactly like the things that are in Wisconsin on Bray Road and almost everywhere else. 90% of the sightings are of this large wolf-like upright creature that can, and I should add, they can drop down and run on all fours still too. They don't have to be on their hind legs, and a lot of witnesses will either see them trotting along on their hind legs and then they drop down to all four when they see they're being watched, or they're on all fours and they stand up to menace and be aggressive toward whoever's looking at them. So they can be seen both ways. But yeah, this was back in 1987, before the Beast of Bray Road. It just never went national or got really known much outside the state of Michigan. And this Traverse City DJ thought he would make a CD for to raise funds for an animal shelter. And he was kind of a musician, so he wrote this kind of ballad-like song and called the Dogman. Actually, he called it The Legend, but it was about the Dogman, which was kind of an old lumber camp so-called myth from that state.
Right.
And he said he took a few old lumber camp stories that he'd heard of, and then there had been something interesting on the news that I think inspired him toward this end, where there was a house in Luther. They call it a cabin, but I've been there. It's a little two-story house with siding on the outskirts of town, where they had seen scratches like 7 feet up on the siding, and there were large dog tracks all around on the ground below it. So that one he put in it, and then he made some up. You know, he just made, when he ran out of things, he made a few of them up. And then he played it on April Fool's Day in 1987, because it was supposed to come out on the 7th year of every decade. That was the deal. And when he played it, you know, he was kind of tongue-in-cheek, and he was expecting people to be yucking it up. And instead, people were calling and saying, hey, that Dogman is no joke. I saw him, or my grandpappy saw him, or, you know, it's out there in the woods and it's real. And he was rather taken aback. But then it just came out more and more. So when the Beast of Bray Road went national, he actually contacted me. And, yeah, they had like a Dogman art contest, and, you know, we're really playing it up a lot more than I ever did with the Beast, because he kept it as sort of a money-raising thing for this animal in Traverse City. But it was mostly like the one that we had in the way people would describe it, what they had seen. So it's pretty universal. And then there are also the universal so-called magical types that are different, that have the shoulders. They'll usually have red eye shine instead of the normal green-yellow that canines have.
Are those the ones that are described with having like almost German Shepherd heads with the tall, pointy ears like a German Shepherd?
Well, the German Shepherd is one of the universal terms, and the tall, pointy ears. But you do what these other ones often have. They're very often pitch black furred, and then besides, on top of the pointy ears, they have tufts of hair, or the ears are taller, like they'll say it looked like Anubis.
Right.
You know, the Egyptian god of the dead, where it looks like it has a black furred jackal head, and then either a human body or a human-like.
Are they flesh and blood, or are those supposed to be more like shadow creatures?
I think those are probably not flesh and blood, because they appear suddenly inside people's bedrooms and then walk back to the wall and do other strange, creepy things. So
wow.
I think there's something other than the normal wolf-looking ones that just walk on their hind legs and leer or sneer or jeer at people, depending on which word they choose. That's how they describe it.
So, I mean, yeah, this is where it just gets interesting and confusing for me, because it's like, I mean, do we lump all these sort of creatures into the paranormal field? Because, you know, there's cases of Bigfoots, you know, transversing through walls too and showing up in people's bedrooms and communicating psychically to them. I mean, are there different categorizations in your mind that, like, hey, you know, here's some flesh and blood Bigfoot that you know, that can't you know, go through walls, and then there's the type that can, and then here's Dogman that can't, and here's Dogman that can? Or do you think this is all part of some bigger paranormal phenomenon?
Right. You know, and that's one of the biggest bugaboos. And I mean, you can drive yourself crazy thinking, okay, this one can do that, that can't. You know, there must be 47 varieties. And there are, I mean, I think I could point out, you know, at least 5 or 6 different sorts of them. I don't want to call them species, because that would, you know, they're all animals. But I think that the Native American people I've talked to have the paradigm that best fits all of the reports, which is that it's not an either or, it's more like a sliding scale. And it's that they originally come out of what they call the spirit world. We might call it another dimension, another realm, something like that, another universe. And that they can enter our world most of the time. They believe these passages or portals are in running water, bubbling creek springs, that kind of thing is the best place where they come from.
Sure.
They can come here, and when they're here, most of the time they're entirely corporeal. Their bodies function, you know, they eat, they digest, they procreate, do all these things. But they can, at times, for different reasons we probably don't understand well yet, can be sort of partially in one world and partially in our world at the same time. And that's when you get these kind of spooky sightings. And that when they really want to, they can go back to that spirit world.
That's
And
fascinating.
It is fascinating because it's the only thing that really fits what everybody in toto describes.
Right.
Well, and you know, to that I could say you can flip the other side of the coin, and there's experiences with humans where, you know, we live in this corporeal world, but then at the time, you know, the veil gets lighter, and then, you know, certain individuals seems to pass through to this other side as well, you know, and then come back. So it seems to be, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, it's all very strange. And I think what you were saying about those, you know, Native American legends, they seem to have a real good grasp on it. Not only because, you know, they don't treat it as some sort of teenage taboo. This is something that's mythologized to them, and it's real as much as it is as they would describe an eagle and its nest. You know, this isn't just part of their, you know, spiritual lore. This, you know, they take this stuff at face value, and then they pass it down. So, yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it's, well, you know, I think of it this way too. I mean, when you get down to the real nitty gritty of what we are, we're made of waves and particles,
Yeah.
you know, and atoms, and which are affected by electromagnetic fields. And electromagnetic fields are not just, there's not just like one electromagnetic vibration. It's like light waves and like sound waves, which are on sliding scales. There are light waves which are too high in the spectrum for us to see and too low for us to see, but there's this middle sweet spot. And the same thing with sound waves. And I think that electromagnetic fields, which every living thing, we have them, the creatures have them, you know, the earth has it, is perhaps also on a sliding scale.
I would agree with that. Do you think that our consciousness plays the part of the tuner in some sense of the word?
Yes.
Like,
yes,
our awareness of these things and our openness to them, and not only that, but our focusing in on these types of phenomenon actually can sort of turn that dial for us.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, I've experienced a couple of things that really make me think that. One of these, again, I wrote about it in The Monsters Among Us, but more in detail, but this happened a couple of years ago in a farm field right near Bray Road, which I'd been surveilling and experimenting in with the farmer who owns it for several years. And he and I and another colleague were out surveilling his 40-some acre hayfield one night because he'd been putting out dead deer that he collected legally. I won't go into all that, but for bait, because he'd started having animal mutilations and was studying what would happen if he put, you know, all these different deer out. It was like deer number 18 over a couple of different years, and nothing was touching it, nothing, and it should have just been eaten like almost immediately.
Sure.
And I said, well, you know, maybe there's something bigger than the things that usually come and eat it, and maybe we could see what it was if we just, you know, sat out and kind of watched the field, because his trail cams weren't getting anything but weird lights, which they do. He's got thousands of pictures from his trail cams. So anyway, we're sitting out in this car with our friend and colleague Sanjay, and the two guys, and they're both over like 6'2". We're in the front seat. I was in the back. I always like to make sure there's nothing sneaking up on us from behind.
Smart,
So,
good.
and it's a nice August night. We're watching airplanes coming along this flight route that wasn't too far away, and it was over the trees where he usually laid he had this deer carcass lying there, so we were facing that way. And all of a sudden, one of these so-called airplanes stopped. It just stopped dead in the sky. I've been watching it make progress, and then right before my eyes, it backed up. It wasn't like oscillating. And I said, guys, I don't think that one's an airplane. And I pointed. And now this is what's important. The three of us all suddenly gave it our attention.
Mm-hmm.
When we did that, it began to travel in a straight beeline across that field straight for us. And not at a super fast rate, but I mean, it didn't take it all that long to get across the field, enough so that we were all gasping, going, "What is that? What? Wait, that's coming this way!" You know, we're making exclamations because we had no way to really interpret what this thing was or what it was going to do. And I'm fumbling with my camera, trying to get it in position so I can, because they're kind of blocking my view, the way the car was pointing. And before we knew it, it was right at the car. And it was like maybe 30 feet in the air and maybe 25, 30 feet away from us, which isn't very far.
What?
And
wow,
and
keep
there's
going.
three of us. There's three of us who think, you know, it's not just like one scared person. And it was about the size of a basketball. We all agreed it was a perfect sphere, and it was dimly, well, not, I shouldn't say dimly, it was lit from within somehow, but not like a paper lantern. It was a lighted spherical object.
So this sort of sounds like you hear about the spook lights or will-o'-the-wisp.
Yeah, very, very much so. It's given me a lot of new thoughts on that. So anyway, we're looking at it, and I'm just getting my camera up to focus it, and Sanjay just gets seized by this impulse to shine the flashlight on it. And they had a big mag light in the front seat, and his window was down, and he just shined it on this thing. And we all had this amazing feeling that whatever it was shocked and surprised that we shined this light on it. And it kind of, we still argue about how to describe it, because it was something that's very hard to describe unless you see it. It was sort of jittering a little bit is maybe the closest, but not really getting, I don't know. I fall apart when I try and describe it. But anyway, it closed down its light.
It wasn't expecting that.
No, and it was shocked, and then it closed down its light, and we didn't know where it went or what it did or anything. And Sanjay said, "Well, I'm going to get out of the car and see if it went behind those bushes." And we're like, "Okay, you go ahead."
Yeah, if you want to volunteer for that, go.
Yeah, go on, Sanjay.
Get out there, Sanjay.
Yeah, we're behind you. So he did, and within less than a minute, he came kind of staggering back to the car, and he said, "I'm sick. I'm really sick. We have to leave right now."
Oh.
And since he was driving, we did. And Lee and I, who had remained in the car, felt fine. But we left at that point. And who knows? Maybe he saved us from getting abducted. I don't know what it would have done.
Mm-hmm.
State, I have no idea. But the thing is, it was when we all put our consciousness upon it.
Sure.
And looked at it and were observing it, that is when it made its move and made its way across the field toward us.
Well,
So wild, isn't it?
We've had guests on this show actually talk about similar experiences. One involving a black triangle UFO that she and her mother, when she was a child, observed from a distance, and as soon as they were focusing on it, it zoomed towards them and hovered over them before disappearing into the night sky.
Right.
What do you make of that, Linda? It's amazing.
I think that they somehow sense our consciousness and interact with it, and we have electromagnetic fields. We have, some people divide our inner selves up into different types of bodies, and somehow they're attuned to that. That was the second of those basketball-sized light spheres that I'd seen. The other was in the basement of an old haunted house in Michigan.
No, thank you.
It was 7 feet away from me, hovering just below the ceiling. It materialized. There was supposed to have been a ghost they called Basement Billy in Michigan.
That sounds like something out of Ghostbusters.
It does. And he lived in the basement. He supposedly died of diphtheria when he was a teenager in that house. And people would see him out in the parking lot wearing these late 1800s clothes. And the owner knew of that too. Well, here's the interesting thing. We both saw Basement Billy, but all I saw was a lighted sphere, and what she saw was the full-blown figure of this young man. And we were both pretty shocked. It was quite an experience. All I wanted to do was get upstairs.
Wow. Well, that's a clue. That's a clue to help people clue in that our consciousness definitely plays a part of it,
Right.
because two people that see the same, let's say, apparition or UFO or even Bigfoot or any other type of, oddity, can describe it in different ways, and can have different textualizations of it. You know what I mean? So that's what's always confounding to me, is like, three or four or five people will see the exact, will basically be describing the same type of phenomenon account, but the way they describe it is
Whoops, I
different.
lost you
Like,
guys.
oh, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Now I can. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
I was just saying how when you have a variety of witnesses, they can often see and describe different types of things.
Well, she had expectation. I mean, she had an expectation of seeing this young gentleman in, dressed in clothing, and I had no expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time when I was taking photos for my my Weird Michigan book, and so I had lots of haunted places. I had to go and take a picture, and almost always you go up there, you go through the motions, nothing shows up, you take a picture of nothing, and then you leave. This time, I still didn't get a picture because I was too shocked to actually even press the shutter on my camera, which I had hanging around my neck and ready to go. But the thing was, she was expecting a certain thing, and I was expecting nothing. And that's, whatever it was, interacted with our consciousness to show us.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not even, Linda, I don't even think it's limited to human consciousness either. I've told this story a few times on the show, but a couple summers ago, I woke up in the middle of the night about 4 a.m., and my dog, my English bulldog, Albie, was growling in the living room, and I came out into my living room, and while the curtains were drawn, there's some, on the ground floor window in the living room, peering into my apartment in the direction of my dog, I could see the silhouette of an entity that looked like a classic alien gray. And
Yeah.
and then my other dog, who had shot out of bed once she heard him growling, she saw it too, and they were going crazy. And I had just run out there, sort of like when you were on your walk. I had just run out there to hush them up because it was so late. I was not expecting to see something through the, peering through the
Yeah.
curtains, and within 10 seconds, I was like, oh my God, I saw it turn its head. I could see where this long, thin neck fused at the base, at the back of the entity's skull. And I turned on my light and was startled, and it disappeared. It ran off. And my next door neighbor actually came out onto the driveway and said that asking me what was up, and he said that he had felt like he'd been being watched for the past hour. He was up late watching TV. So animals see these things too. I mean, I don't know if my dogs also saw what looked like a classic alien gray, but that was the furthest thing from my mind when I encountered this thing.
Sure.
Something
Wow.
has entered the physical world.
Well, and that was and Linda, maybe you'll agree. I mean, I tend to feel like you have to trust your instincts when you're an eyewitness. You kind of have to rely on your gut feeling about what you're seeing. And my gut instinct told me that it was something that slipped in from another realm and was passing through, and I happened to catch a glimpse of it. But it was something that I wasn't supposed to see.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds about right.
It's wild. I mean, you were talking about, the expectations of what we see, and hearing these stories of these bipedal canines, and to be honest, the legend of Dogman has really kind of come up to the surface in the last decade or so, and it's very analogous to after the Patterson-Gimlin film footage. I mean, the sightings of Bigfoot kind of just skyrocketed. You know what I mean? And maybe it's
Right.
because people's attention were more aware of it, and their expectations they had. And it's also like, your uncovering of the Beast of Bray Road, since I think that's kind of the integral one here. It seems to be that Dogman has really resurfaced into the minds of the general public, and because of that, we are seeing and people are spotting more and more of these creatures in and around the world. Would you think that kind of rings true?
Yeah, I really, really do. And I'd say it's even maybe just the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dogman thing has gotten kind of big. For a long time, I was kind of like the lone voice in the wilderness, crying
Right.
man, and people are saying, no, there's no such thing as Dogman. It's a snouted Bigfoot. Or, nobody was accepting it until the critical number of witnesses just grew to such a proportion that people almost had to start paying attention. And it was allowing so many others who'd been living with these things they'd seen, 20, 30, some even more than that years ago, and didn't know what to do with them, or where do you file something like that in your mind, and so they were coming forth. And I think, and there's still people, who are just becoming aware that it's a thing now.
Well,
They
I
can report it.
I think, Linda, you deserve a lot of credit for that. I mean, like I said, going into reading your books as a skeptic, you really made a believer out of me. I mean, I certainly don't know what it is exactly, but you bring a lot of credibility to these people's stories, and it's one of the numerous reasons why I really appreciate and am a fan of your work. So
Yeah, hats off to you for
yeah,
sure.
thank you so much. Before we go, and we don't want to keep you too much longer, what when you were talking, I want to circle back to something you said a few minutes ago about portals and bodies of water, because you've written about how a lot of these things happen. A lot of these sightings occur not only around creeks, or I think, lakes, you maybe even said, but where you have dogmen, you tend to have Bigfoot or a green mist or these orbs or UFO sightings. Skinwalker Ranch is obviously a good example of that. And sounds like Wisconsin has some crazy stuff going on as well.
It does.
What's the relationship, if you could, between nature? What role does nature play in these sort of pockets of land? Play with how do they interact with these various types of creatures that we encounter?
Well, sometimes I think it's sort of geophysical. One thing Wisconsin has, which is really unusual, right almost in the center of the state, is this miles long range. It's called the Baraboo Range, of this quartzite. It's a very ancient quartzite rock type of crystal with these pink red crystal things, and that's what it's composed of. It's like this little low mountain range lying across the state. And right near there, you have lots of concentrations of the ancient animal-shaped effigy mounds, which, by the way, 96% of ancient animal-shaped effigy mounds, that means like they're not necessarily burial, some are just ceremonial, are in southern Wisconsin.
Wow.
If you can imagine. And when the first settlers came, southern Wisconsin was almost like this magically transformed park where everything was mowed, these huge animal-shaped mounds, which they weren't real high. They were maybe 3 feet tall, or not much more than that at the most, but some were like 160 feet across, in the shape of, there were man-shaped ones, the thunderbird, all kinds of different animals, very stylized, but they weren't crude. They were beautifully made, and many of them persist today, the ones that weren't plowed under or whatever. We have parks that save some of them. But imagine all of that going on, and they're considered very, very sacred by almost all the tribes in the area today, although people think that it was probably ancestors of the Ho-Chunk that actually constructed them. They're about 1,200 years old, most of them. And you think all of that is there, and then we also have the lake formations and the proximity to the Great Lakes and lots of rivers and things that go through. And the geology is just sort of there for that amplification of whatever, I hate to say vibes, it dates me. It's old, but words sort of fail, at least when you're a layman trying to talk about these concepts that could have some sort of effect on electromagnetic fields. And actually, the book I'm writing right now, I actually found somebody who backs that up with some studies of how animals are affected by that sort of thing, and the electromagnetic fields of so many things are affected by what's in the ground underneath. So there's a lot to the geology of it, I believe, that is mostly undiscovered, because it's just a few laymen like me here and there going, hey, all these things are here, it must mean something. And then my hope is that the scientists will come in and say, well, let's just look at it, and maybe they will find something that tallies up. Maybe they won't. Maybe it will remain a mystery that we don't understand. But it is all there in Wisconsin.
Well, I just love the way you're thinking about it and really thinking in, for lack of a better term, not only in third dimensions, but fourth and fifth dimensions as well.
Covering your bases.
Yeah, you're covering everything. It's so cool. Before we let you go, I need to ask you a very geeky fanboy question, if that's okay. I'm sure you get you've gotten this before, but before you take off, can you tell us what is the weirdest thing you've ever witnessed or ever heard from a witness that just it's one that you're like, I gotta put this in the X-Files. I don't know what to make of it.
Well, if you've read The Monsters Among Us, you've read the story about the werewolf church lady.
Yes, that's my favorite. I'm so happy you brought that up. That is my favorite story.
How could it get any weirder? And from such credible people. I mean, these are people that I kept going back and back to in person, you know, making the trip to meet up with them personally. Took my husband along as a truthometer and checked out every detail of anything they told me. And they were just a nice middle-aged couple, just plain salt-of-the-earth people who were not wanting any attention from it. They didn't want their names used or anything like that. But they and their 2 children, it's 4 witnesses at least, plus other witnesses that I couldn't talk to, who saw this woman in a church transform almost simultaneously into a completely furry, gray wolf creature.
Amazing.
Instantly, correct? Like she went from screaming to then suddenly she was just a wolf creature.
Right, exactly. And they all saw it. And there were some elders that immediately tackled her down onto a pew because they happened to be standing there at that time in the service. And she was kind of dragged away. And all of a sudden, she was the woman again.
Wow.
That story is such a great. Please, everyone, I implore you to read that.
You've whet my appetite.
Well,
I've read bits and pieces, but I'm holding in my hand Monsters Among Us by Linda S. Godfrey, an exploration of otherworldly Bigfoots, wolfmen, portals, phantoms, and odd phenomena. And if you haven't read it, go out and get it and enjoy that crazy story because that is off the charts.
We did an interpretation of that story for our Patreon listeners, Linda, a couple months ago. If we'll send you that file, it was really fun. I sort of retell the story that you tell in your book, and we have some fun sound effects with it too. So we'll send you a link to that.
What an honor this has been.
This has been so cool, Linda. We could talk to you forever, and sadly, that would just be inconvenient for everyone.
And like Dogman, thank you for helping legitimize us.
Yeah, bringing more credibility to the Bigfoot Collectors Club.
We appreciate
it. Notorious, if anything.
Linda, where can people find your work? Where can they find your books? And what's the name of your upcoming book, if you have a title? When can we look forward to reading that?
Yeah, the upcoming book is called I Know What I Saw, and then it's Modern Day Encounters with Modern Day Encounters with Monsters and their legends and something else.
Okay, cool. Still working on it.
Awesome. I'm in.
It changes about every week, but it is at the publisher in production now.
Oh, great.
And it will be out in early July. It takes them that long to get the book together. But
I know I'm going to add to my July 2019 summer reading list.
Totally.
That's for sure.
Thank you.
And your website, once again, is?
LindaGodfrey.com. No W's, just Linda, Godfrey.com. And it's got pretty much everything. Just navigate your way around. There's a search bar and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a great website. I've spent many a time there. So I really am such and I think I speak for the guys as well. We're big fans of yours, Linda. Please keep up the good work, and please come back on the show sometime. We would love to talk to you again, maybe when your new book comes out.
A most welcomed guest. Yes.
Thank you so much. I would love that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Linda. We will talk to you again in the future.
Okay. And awesome. You and your listeners have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
we will.
Linda.
Oh, you're the best. I hope you had fun.
I did.
Okay,
did.
Cool.
I still am.
Great. We'll this is going to go up next week, and when it does, I will send you a link so you can listen to it.
Perfect.
Awesome, man! You're the best, Linda. Thank you so much. And I know, right? I really wish you could see Bryce's smile right now. This has been such an awesome
I'm smiling
conversation.
too.
I'm satiated.
Good, yay!
Cryptidly satiated.
All right, you're in the Hall of Fame. We're gonna bug you to come back on the show sometime for sure.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay, great. Have
All
a
right.
great time. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you again.
Okay,
Bye.
sounds great.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
And we're back, and it's time for High Strangeness. But first, how great was that interview with Linda?
Phenomenal.
Gosh.
Mm-hmm. Hey, maybe that's where that word comes. Phenomenal.
I think it is.
Phenomenal
you know.
phenomenon.
It was a
interview.
phenomenon
That's
interview.
just- everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I've got another story that I think is pretty phenomenal in and of itself. This is my story of high strangeness this week, and this is called, let's call this the REED Family Off-World Experiences. Are you familiar with Thomas Reed and his case of abduction?
this is sounding familiar, but it's
Mhm.
not jumping off the top of my head. No,
If it sounds familiar, it's probably because
it
this-
happened to me.
You are Thomas Reed.
You might want to you get regressed.
Gotta get regressed,
Gotta get
dude.
regressed. You
It's a
gotta get
catchphrase.
regressed.
Gotta get regressed.
It might sound familiar because the Great Barrington Historical Society and Museum has formally inducted the UFO story as part of as a historical site where the actual abduction took place. And this is the first story having to do with UFOs or anything like that made it into a city's historical site.
What is a Great Barrington? Is that the name of the town?
This is the name of the town. Yes, nearby.
What's a Great Barrington?
But they are. So this is how the story goes. In 1966, a 6-year-old Thomas Reed and his younger brother Matthew Reed were in his bedroom on his family's horse farm in the Berkshires when this first encounter begins. Basically, they were in their bedroom when Thomas says, you know, they're just kind of fooling around. They're on a bunk bed, and you know, they're just talking to each other, and this kind of orb suddenly, you know, they felt the kind of temperature and the barometric pressure kind of just drop. You know, everything kind of got really still, and this light that they kind of noticed outside made its way in the shape or form of an orb into their bedroom.
It's just what Linda was talking about.
Yeah, it was. And so they're kind of staring at this thing, and when the light from outside started to get really, really bright. And basically the next thing they remember is, boom, they're outside on their farm staring at a UFO. Yeah, and from that point, they were, you know, the UFO kind of moves off.
What kind of craft?
Disc shape. I think he originally described it as almost like a hula hoop, like this bright blue and white lighted hula hoop. So, you know, disc shape, cigar shape, depending on your angle of it.
Was it a ring?
Yeah.
Hollow in the middle?
Yeah. Well, I suppose so. I mean, there's not too much more detail on that, but
Oh, a circle.
yeah. So anyway, their mother brings them back into the house, and that was the first incident that took place in 1966 in September. The following year, there's another incident at their home on Boardman Street in Sheffield. More strange lights, the sound of doors slamming, and then the boys are back inside the vessel. This second encounter is where it gets really creepy, because so it's about a year later from that first encounter, and they're both kind of like, all they remember is just, boom, that light was in their room, and then they're outside looking at this thing.
And they have a memory of looking at the UFO.
Yes, a
all
conscious
year
memory.
long. They
Yeah,
think about it.
yeah,
Okay.
that's right. A conscious memory of looking at this thing. So a year later, again in September, you know, again they're in their bedroom. It's nighttime, and the mom had come in. I believe her name is Nancy. Her mom came in and thought there was a storm coming, so she shut the door window, and she's like, "Oh, lightning? That's strange. No thunder, but you know." She shut the window, and so she goes back to bed, and the boys kind of see this kind of light growing from outside, and to where all of a sudden, you know, it's literally like engulfed their room. Matthew, the younger brother, who's now 5, looks over to where Thomas was, and he's gone. He's not there. And so Matthew, the younger brother, runs to go get his mom, and their grandmother lived with them too. So it was the grandma, mom, and the two boys. Now Matthew runs down the hall to go get his mom, and he remembers her almost like in this kind of catatonic, couldn't move state. He describes it as like her hands and her feet could move and was kind of crunching the blankets. But she,
terrifying.
yeah, I mean, and this is a 5-year-old kid, and but she couldn't move. Finally, he's able to kind of get her up, after a while, and they get up and they're going down. He's screaming. He's like, come into the bedroom, and then, he says that they hear this sound of doors slamming. It wasn't actual doors slamming, and this high-pitched kind of screeching. And then, as the mom and the Matthew were walking down the hall, Matthew's gone. Literally disappears from, basically right in front of her.
So she went from being catatonic to being able to get up and walk down the hall with him?
Yeah, I think that's how it plays out, because I know that they walked back down the hall into their bedroom, and that's when she was literally walking with him, and then Matthew literally disappeared from her view. Now, the next thing Thomas knows, and then it's, so the boys are back inside this vessel, inside this UFO craft, and I'll get back to more on that later. Now, the next thing Thomas Reed knows is that he's in his driveway being scooped up by his mother, who's been searching frantically for the boys on horseback. So, as her boys are gone, she literally is like looking all over for these, she saddles up her horse and literally starts, combing the property for them, thinking that they had, God knows what. Come to find out that maybe she did know what happened to them, because this isn't the first UFO experience that she had. In 1954, I believe was the year, and when she was in Maine with a friend, her and her friend spotted a UFO literally right overhead of them. And so she had a history, before her boys were even born, of seeing a large lighted craft with somebody next to her. Now, those are the first two incidences of the boys, Thomas and Matthew. 2 years later, the family is driving on Route 7, and they're coming back from a horse show, because they had raised horses, and they're basically going through this what's called Sheffield Bridge. You ever seen bridges in Madison County? Those kind of really quaint little bridges?
I've seen it 300 times.
Well, imagine this little bridge. It's like a little carport bridge that goes over.
Kind of one of those little barn-looking bridges.
That's
with
exactly
the
right.
bridge.
That just goes over a small creek. Now, as they're going into this bridge, the grandma who's in the passenger seat, the mom is driving. The grandma turns around because Thomas had given his younger brother Matthew a fireball, and she was going to say, don't be careful, he could choke. And when she sees this kind of large, kind of lighted area through the woods, which she described later as like a lighted strip mall. So as they're going through the bridge, Thomas Reed remembers these lights kind of engulfing the bridge, coming through the cracks underneath the floor. And as they exit this bridge, it's a small bridge, only about like 30 feet. And they get out, and the car suddenly stalls. It just pulls over on the side of the road. And what he says is like the barometric pressure drops again, so much so that it gets so silent that the sounds of cricket and cicadas, cicadas, just became voluminous in volume. Like it was almost like,
That's
super loud, but also at the same time super quiet. And then, so basically, the light is, as they exit the bridge. Now, let me get back a couple seconds here. Before they stall, they both look over. They get past the bridge. They look over and they see this kind of like spherical craft, almost with lights coming out from underneath it, almost like in the shape of an ice cream cone, And they're driving, and it's following along parallel with them, And this is kind of around dusk, around nighttime. when all of a sudden this spherical lighted object veers right in front of their car, and that's when the thing stalled out. And now the next thing that this whole family remembers is, boom. Well, Thomas Reed has a conscious memory of, after that, next thing he knows, he's in this large hangar. He describes it as this, like, large kind of metallic hangar, just huge. And he could hear the muffled sounds of his mom and his grandma, kind of screaming for him, which is, just awful if you think about it.
I'd rather not.
I know. So, but then the next thing that happened is he remembers being kind of grabbed by his left arm and taken to this, to this kind of this room where he was laid on a table, which we hear so many times before, and kind of he was put in this cage, as he described it, like they kind of like covered his body, and this weird kind of creature that he described that sort of looked like an ant. It had like a football-shaped head, teardrop, bamboo stick-type legs.
Whoa.
What we might describe as like a praying mantis style.
Yeah, I was gonna say this sounds like one of the mantisoid aliens.
Yeah, but he described it in a way that was almost like it was genetically modified, like it was almost like AI type, but with some human characteristics, because it had human hands. Strange. And so it places these like weird like rocks on his body that he described looking like raisins. It almost makes you think of, what's that therapy where they put the hot stones,
Right.
hot stone therapy.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Hot rocks.
Hot rocks, yeah, exactly. I don't know what the purpose of that was.
I think it's called pop rocks.
Pop
therapy?
rock therapy. Yeah, exactly. But then the next thing he knows, and it goes into more detail when he talks about it, hearing a couple of the interviews that he did. The next thing he knows is they're back on the street. His mom, the car is facing the opposite way. His mom is in the driver's seat. His grandma is in the middle of the road, kind of wandering aimlessly around. And his younger brother is kind of out cold in the back seat in a fetal position. And so they were all, just kind of plopped back into their car. Now, Reed has told these stories many times, and it hasn't always gone well, but recently his tale had found recognition in an unlikely place. The Great Barrington Historical Society and Museum has formally inducted the UFO story. What does that mean? It means we believe it's true, said Debbie Oberman, the director of the society. I know we're going to get a lot of backlash, we're going to get hammered, she said, but we have given it an awful lot of thought, and based on the evidence we've been given, we believe this is a significant and true event. The Historical Society believes it's the first time a mainstream historical society or museum in the United States has declared a UFO encounter to be historical fact. But the decision was far from unanimous. There were 9 board members on the society. 3 of them were strongly opposed, but it passed with consensus.
That's awesome. Good on them.
Yeah. What most interested the Historical Society is the 1969 encounter when all 4 of them were on the road, because dozens of people in the area reported seeing an unidentified flying object around that time, typically described as a disc-shaped craft performing acrobatic maneuvers in the sky. Many of those eyewitnesses called the local radio station WSBS, which covered the sightings in real time. The radio station provided documentation to the Historical Society, which interviewed many of the eyewitnesses, and they also examined a polygraph test taken by Thomas Reed. The Reed abductions are well known in the world of UFO enthusiasts. Now, it gets interesting too, because in March of 2009, his brother Matthew, who is now he's an officer of the law and a private he's an investigator.
He's Judge Dredd.
Yeah, well, basically,
he is the law.
Yeah, he's a plainclothes officer, and he was driving back from, I believe it was Brownsburg, Indiana, from a movie. And as he's driving home, he drops his friend off, and he's driving, and he sees this kind of orange ball of light in the sky, and And he starts to kind of follow it, you know, and he's driving down this road, and he sees it goes behind this house, and he follows it. I don't know why he would, but you know, sometimes people are just led to these things. And as he's following it, boom, the next thing he remembers is he's in an open field, and there's a little bit of blood under his nose, there's mud on his shoes, and his watch is, you know, off by about an hour and a half.
Whoa.
Finally, you know, he makes his way back to his car, and which he turns it on, and the gauges go batshit. You know, they're flipping around and they're dialing around. And so he makes his way back home, and you know, I think he'd kind of repressed a lot of those memories when he was younger. And so he starts to get a really uneasy feeling, and he decides to contact MUFON that night, which is the Mutual UFO Network. And they hear his tale, and they bring out a licensed investigator, Steve White, I believe is his name. Yes, a detective with 30 years of experience. He investigates the case for MUFON, and once he gets there, you know, he starts hearing Matthew's story, and he starts asking about if there's anything else like this happen, and it kind of, you know, opened up that tale of when they were younger boys. And so he calls his older brother Thomas, who comes over, and then they start to divulge to Steve White, you know, the family's history with abductions. And that's when he brings in more of his own investigators, and they take a look, you know, and he starts to really like investigate this case. He's like, there's a lot here. Not to mention, you know, that case in 1969 got a J. Allen Hynek and Valet classification, a legitimate classification as a CE4 incident, a close encounters of the fourth kind incident, you know, which was kind of a big deal. It legitimized, you know, their story of what took place early on in their two lives, because they took a lot of shit for it, you know.
Sure.
They owned a restaurant called the Village Green in Sheffield, and you know, it really kind of tore their family apart, those first two incidences where the boys were taken. Anyway, back to Matthew in the year 2009. So Steve White brings out these investigators, and they start to go over the car. He says, you know, we just need some evidence. And, you know, he turns on the car, and the dials go crazy. And so they bring out their electromagnometer, and they find that it's kind of off the charts with radiation. One of the detectives says, I forget how it was quoted. He's like, this is like readings from a sun, you know?
Whoa.
Especially towards the back of the car. So there was that, which really made him think there was something here. Anyway, so
and was that before or after it was put into the Historical Society?
this was after, I believe.
Wow.
Wait, no, this was before
Leading
his
up
case.
to
Yeah,
that.
they put it in the Historical Society in 2015, but
Oh, okay.
but in that consensus on that board of 9 members, they make no mention of the first 2 abductions, and they make no mention of the 2009 case.
Which abduction do they? Just the bridge?
They focus on the one by the
Bridge.
bridge. Yeah. Now there's so many interesting elements to this story too. You know, Robert Bigelow pops back up in this one, as he sent part of his own private team of investigators from BASS, Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Studies, to go meet with the Reeds before the MUFON investigators get there, I think is how it goes. But either way, regardless, we know that Bigelow and his team, his new team, not NIDS, which we've
Right.
covered before, was very interested in this case with the Reed family.
Wow. And where are they today?
Today, so very interesting. You know, Thomas Reed, I believe he's in Knoxville, Tennessee. But you know, he hit part his life. He moved to Miami and created Miami Models. He became, you know, he became a big model agency runner and stuff like that.
So he became a scumbag.
Right. But anyway, I mean, I feel like I, you know, brushed through so many of the details of this story, but there's so much more to this. Even their father, who
I was going to say, where's Dad in all this? Because I feel like I could blame this whole thing on an absentee father.
yeah, no, absolutely. their father was reported as kind of missing from their lives and an alcoholic, I believe, and his mother actually ended up remarrying a guy named I forget his name, but he went on to run for a state legislature and actually got the job. So he was very kind of hush hush about like this family bringing up these incidences. But yeah, no. So that's the story of the Reed family off-world experiences, and he never liked calling them an abduction. He always wanted it to call it an off-world experience.
Whoa.
Yeah, and his brother describes being in the ship too once he started to regain a memory of it, and he described like three, gray type entities, the typical gray with like he called it like they had like elephant skin and
Weird.
And yeah, but
So do we know since 2009 if they've had any type of other encounters? Do they have kids?
yeah, it's a great question. So Thomas Reed's son was reported to have like some real like adept abilities, so much so that
Like he's telekinetic?
yeah, this says Knoxville Hypnosis Center sent him a letter from Michael Buckner, PhD, of the director of Knoxville Hypnosis Center, said, "This is to confirm that I interviewed your son earlier this year, and he is an intelligent and capable young man who appears to have some intuitive or psychic ability. In my interview with him, he was consistently able to tell me numbers that I wrote down on a piece of paper that he could not see. You also mentioned that he seems to be able to do remote viewing, which I was able to confirm. It was a pleasure to interview your son and to work with you." So
we need eyes on that kid.
I know.
Seriously.
Is he like our age now? He's got to be pretty old
yeah, I think
now.
he's in his teens or something like that.
Word.
But,
Yeah, our age.
Yeah, our age.
yeah,
So our age.
basically our age. But no, that's an interesting question that you asked because yes, they do believe that this is that this remains within their family and that this is generational and that yeah, so
Seems like it. There's some connection in this
there's
family here.
definitely some type
Wow.
of connection that whoever's taking them or offering them these experiences have a direct interest in that family genetic line.
Wow, I had not heard the story before. I'll have to dig in and do a little bit more research, but sounds like your classic off-world experience.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all there.
It would make a great film. It's so the way you told it too, so cinematic. Like I could see that bridge and that hangar and
Oh,
everything.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
super scary. This one's scary.
Yeah, there's some dark notes to it as well. There was his father who ended up marrying his mother later in their life. He ended up not wanting to talk about these incidences with the UFOs, but once his political career kind of ended, he befriended a lawyer named Buckman or something like that who took this case to the UN. So this case was heard at the United Nations on October 2nd, I believe. What was the date? But anyway, and then the same day it was that his father's lawyer presented it to the case. His father kind of died around some mysterious circumstances.
What?
Yeah, it was. He died of oh god. Now this is where I wish I had my notes, but some sort of Legionnaire's disease or something like that. And they combed his office and they found like new ceiling tiles, and in the vent they found like this empty vial.
What?
Yeah, so it's like there's some foul play type things happening in this one.
Some conspiracy theories
Here
baked
we
into
go.
this one.
Yeah, it's
Here
got
we
it
go.
all.
In 2006, Howard was the guy's name, voiced his interest in a collective book project on the family's experiences with vessels and other life forms, to include a compilation of sensitive material gathered over the years. Howard suffered an untimely death by a virus of unknown origin on October 2nd. This was 14 years to the day after the Reed's case was mentioned at the United Nations Symposium, October 2nd, 1992. The CDC, on sweeping Howard's office, reported finding a vial containing the deadly virus in his air conditioning unit.
The CDC?
The Center for Disease Control.
Whoa.
The building was closed and remains closed to this day. On October 6th was then proclaimed a day of remembrance in Howard's honor.
What year? What year?
This was 1992.
Weird.
by the city of Bridgeport, Connecticut, is he was strongly supported by Senator Christopher Dodd, a PhD who released his test results regarding the Reed case after evaluating family members. On September 15th, 2010, was also found dead on November 12th, 2010, just 8 weeks later.
That's scary.
Yeah, I mean,
That's wild.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, I mean, and the CDC saying they found the vial too. I mean, that's very legitimate. That's not like some fringe organization. That's,
No.
I mean,
no, I know. So, I mean, it leaves you wondering a few things anyway. But so this is the kind of case of the Reed family that's been torn apart by these happenings. Yeah.
that is a fascinating
Wow,
story.
that was just a couple years after that. When he died. Oh, it's weird. It's just a couple years after the Linda Napolitano UFO abduction case in Manhattan that also involved like a UN witness. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's right. That's related. I think. I mean, because they were speaking, they were gonna. That guy was gonna be speaking at that symposium at the United Nations, which was to I forget what the details surrounding why they were holding that symposium. I could do a little bit more research, but yeah, that's a very interesting case. That one's called the Brooklyn Bridge abduction.
Yeah, we'll have to cover that at some point.
Bud
It's
Hopkins wrote a book on.
Creepy.
Yeah, that's another creepy one.
Oh,
Anyway,
well, there you go.
there's your story of high strangeness.
Loved it. Great job, man.
Thanks,
That's
man.
spooky. I'm gonna think about that that mini mall flying out of the woods and
Yeah, wild.
through the bridge slats.
Well,
all right, guys. Before we go, anything? Great job, Bryce. Thank you for that. Anything to plug?
You know, we do have a new special thing here on the BCC.
Oh,
that
that's
I think
right.
we
Why
should
don't you
plug.
tell the kids?
Well, we've set up a paranormal hotline for you guys. So
oh yeah,
we love your emails, and we've been getting a lot of them lately. So thank you guys for sending those. Keep them coming. We've got more L files coming.
BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com.
That's right. But the new thing that we have is we have a phone number now where you can call us, and we might pick up.
We're not going to pick up.
We probably won't.
But leave us a
I'll
message.
pick up.
Bryce will be there.
But
It goes directly to his Bigfoot Museum office.
That's right. That's right.
And when he's on set break from BJ and the Shadow Bats, he'll be sitting back there answering your calls.
All right, guys. So here's the hotline number where you can call and leave your message and hear it possibly played back on the show. The number for Bigfoot Collectors Club is 310-597-4803. Now, can people call from their cell phones?
You can call from a cell phone. You can call from a Skype. You can call from a landline. You can call from a time machine. You can call anywhere.
Definitely, if you are in a time machine, call us from a time machine.
Please do that.
And we want to hear your stories. Now you can leave those. Try to keep it around 2-3 minutes long, because the tighter it is, the more likely we'll be able to play it on the show.
Very true. So can you give that number again there?
It's 310-597-4803.
This reminds me so much of that Ghostbusters commercial, which was
Totally.
one of my favorite thing about Ghostbusters. I should play that for you now here. It was like, have you seen a spook, specter, or a ghost?
Yeah. We want to hear about it.
Oh yeah.
Experience feelings of dread in your basement or attic?
You or any of your family ever seen a spook, specter, or ghost? If the answer is yes, then don't wait another minute. Pick up your phone and call the professionals. Ghostbusters.
Bigfoot Collectors Club.
Staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
us.
So call that number, leave some messages. In the meantime, I wanted to remind everybody that my comic book Venture Van is out there in comic shops. You can order issue 3 still. Pre-order it. It'll be out, I believe, on either the 24th or the 31st of this month. Also, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is coming back this week as you listen to this, Friday, October 12th. And I'm not in the first episode, but I'll be in it shortly. So enjoy that. And until then, we remain Bigfoot Collectors Club. I want to thank Linda S. Godfrey one last time for being an amazing guest.
Absolutely.
incredible.
And I wish we could have heard her opinions on that high strangeness
We'll
story.
have to
but
bring her back.
we'll have to bring her back and talk more about all this stuff. I'm looking forward to that new book. Definitely go out and check out her work. It's some of the best written cryptid investigation material I've ever read. So it's really fun too.
Awesome. Agreed.
Check that stuff out. All right, guys.
All right.
We'll see you
See you
next
next week.
Bye. 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 You need to get regressed.